And joining us now, Minnesota's Attorney General Keith Ellison. Mr. Attorney General, over the last 5 days, we've seen rioters in Minneapolis burn down a police station, force the National Guard to retreat.
So as he begins this, we're seeing a lot of rapid blinking. So stress is already involved, just as we begin talking about this subject, which is not his normal. So we can say this is part of the tells.
And loot neighborhoods.
And we see, just now, a swallow, a hard swallow.
On Saturday, here's what Attorney General Barr had to say.
Groups of outside radicals and agitators are exploiting the situation to pursue their own separate and violent agenda.
Do you have evidence that people from outside Minnesota, whether it's far left extremists or white supremacists, that outsiders are hijacking these riots in Minneapolis?
We have evidence that outsiders have been present and in some...
So as he begins this, we see the swallowing, and then he goes into the believe me look. So high stress.
Cases have played a very negative role, but I've been talking with protesters and trying to get a sense of who some of these folks are, and I've heard a mixed thing. Some of the negative stuff has come from people in Minnesota, and some of it has come from people on the outside. What I'd say is we got enough to handle on our own, and that what we really need to do is refocus on justice for Mr. Floyd. And negative behavior, looting, arson does not help us achieve that goal.
So it's interesting. Prior to the statement, the rioting doesn't help us. That's the believe me look. So we see stress on that.
On Friday, you urged the people of Minneapolis not to react to the National Guard in the streets the way they would to local police. I want to put up something you said. Please remember that this is not the group that you associate with unfair authority. Question, do blacks in Minneapolis have reason to distrust or even to fear their local police?
Sadly, yes. There is a history that has been repeated time and time again. I want to say that many officers are great people. I know so many of them. And I think the chief is an extraordinary person. And the mayor and the council deserve a lot of credit for appointing Mr. Arredondo. But it is an endemic problem in the Minneapolis Police Department.
I found that interesting. So he names the people that he respects as far as the chief and the mayor. And you see that furrow and stress lines in the forehead, not a believe me look, but a furrow in the eyebrows. And I would say that that's his truth.
One problem is our Police Federation president operates as sort of an alternative chief who I think undermines good order in the department. So we have our challenges in front of us. And I think that we can reform, we will reform, and there's a lot of great officers who want to reform. And it's good to have a chief that wants to reform.
While you have been consistent in condemning the violence, on Friday you quoted Martin Luther King saying, "Riot is the way the unheard get heard." Are you suggesting that something good may come from the violence in the streets in Minneapolis this week?
No, the violence really is a negative thing. But I think what Martin Luther King was trying to say is rather than simply dismiss the outrage and the rage that people express after decades, really actually centuries of state-sponsored oppression for African Americans, let's look at the roots of that rage and try to address it rather than just pound it down with massive force. I mean, people are upset for a reason. And to dismiss those reasons means we're going to be relegated to dealing with them again and again and again. I mean, it was John F. Kennedy who said, where peaceful change is made impossible, violent change is inevitable. And these are not statements about what they believe.
So you see a lot of stress on that one as well. Now remember, because we all know that he is a supporter of Antifa. He not only sponsors them, his fundraising has the leader of Antifa. So for those of you looking for tells on this individual, it's like, ooh, he's doing something dirty. You have to remember that belief system that allows for the justification of the kind of terror that we look at as terror. And his body is not going to come off as, ooh, I did something bad. It's going to come off as his truth. Believe me, this is what needs to happen, or this is what's going to happen because of this. It's unsurprising to him. He doesn't view it like you and I would view the riots as an attack on civilization, an attack on individuals' personal property. He views it from the standpoint of oppression and righteous justification. So he'll give you word salad, which is normal for belief systems when they know that their belief isn't widely held. At the same time, they're going to try and convince you of their position, like some religious person trying to convince you of God or no God.
Should happen, they're statements about what does happen. And so I think that's really what the spirit of the comment was.
I want to drill down on this specific case. The fired police officer, Derek Chauvin, was charged with third-degree murder, not second-degree murder, which has a much stiffer penalty, second-degree does. And the big difference has to do with what he intended to do, whether he intended to kill George Floyd. I have to say, we're putting up the video now, and it's hard to see anything other than anything questionable about his intent when he kept his knee on his neck for 9 minutes, including 3 minutes when he was no longer responsive. But I guess two questions. First of all, are you comfortable with the charge of third-degree murder, which means he didn't intend to kill him? And secondly, how do you respond to the Floyd family, members of which are saying that they would like to see you take over the prosecution of this case as a special prosecutor?
Well, let me say that we are very early in this process, very early. It is not uncommon to amend charges. It is not uncommon to add defendants.
So you see him do the hard swallow, and you see the neck go back. It's almost like it comes back and down just a wee bit. He's trying to get away from this. This is not something he wants to be involved in.
Just to let everybody know, the Bob Lazar video has just been released for library subscribers.
If you like it, please share and subscribe. Thanks for watching.